CD versus vinyl. Vinyl versus CD. Hey everybody, this is TJR. If you're new to the channel, welcome. If not, welcome back. And it's time for another edition of CD versus vinyl. Today we're going to be comparing Sticky Fingers by the Rolling Stones from 1971. Now, this was the band's 9th British studio album, but it was their 11th American studio album. Things were crazy back then. This was also the second album to feature guitarist Mick Taylor, his first appearance being on the live album Get Your Ya-Ya's Out. This would be the first studio album without Brian Jones. So let's take a look at these here. I actually need to give a little bit of backstory on the two copies that I used for my comparison here. Here is the vinyl record, and here is my CD copy. Oh, and yeah, that is the Pink Floyd Animals remix. Green Guy here is very protective of it. He really likes the sound of those pigs on the album. That's his favorite thing. Anyways, another story. But let me talk about this here. So I'm holding in my hands a 2 CD deluxe edition here that I have on CD that came out around 2015 or so. It featured the remaster from 2009 on it. I forget the reason why they did this reissue, but they did. I think there was a tour or something they were promoting. But this was a 2 CD deluxe edition. It featured, of course, the album, and it featured a bonus disc of tracks that included early, alternate versions, demos, live tracks. There was actually a much larger box set edition done, which at the time I couldn't afford. So I got this instead. And we'll talk about this here. But first, let me mention one thing. This version here was sold by Target stores here in the US, and it came with a special offer where you would get an LP version free with this purchase. They would give you a code that you could use and redeem online, and then they would send you the LP version. In fact, here is the actual sheet here that came with the record here, the little code here. There was, of course, this Obi strip, which was basically there just to advertise the fact that you got the free LP. More on that in a moment here. And there was also this nice booklet that came with it here. And yeah, this, of course, a decent booklet here. It featured lots of photos, memorabilia. Altogether, I thought this was a good package. I had been disappointed with previous Rolling Stones CD reissues that I had seen previously that were, deluxe editions with an additional CD. I had found them to be kind of chintzy in quality compared to other reissues that I had purchased at the time, but this was a step forward for this here. Now, of course, this CD version here, while it does reproduce a photograph of the original cover, it doesn't have, of course, the zipper that was on the original cover. So I do have this, which I'll show you right now here. I had picked this up a while back at Amoeba Records, and I'm not really sure who really released this, but I picked this up for the fun of having it. This has this little plastic cover that comes off here. I guess that's to keep it from scratching other CDs that you might have, but it actually has the real zipper there. It actually does open up. I remember back when I was growing up as a teenager in the 70s, I would go to record stores and flip through various albums, look at them, and of course, wondered what do they sound like. Years later, I would learn that record stores in the UK, you could actually request to listen to an album before you buy it, and they had little rooms you could go into and you could play it. And that didn't exist here in the US. And I always kind of wondered about this one. I wondered what was underneath the zipper, of course, too. And, it would be a long time before I would actually find out. Of course, you can unzip this, and it will show the image, of course, of the underwear. That's what you see underneath is the underwear. But yeah, I got this just for the fun of having something that replicated the original cover. It replicated the original sleeve. At least I'm guessing this is what the original sleeve looked like. I've never owned a real one, so I just have to kind of assume that's how it was. But yeah, kind of a cool thing. And then of course we've got this, like I said, this little plastic cover comes with it, just kind of laid over it. I understand that the original album packaging with this zipper caused some damage in some cases to the actual vinyl records, which is why later repressings never featured the zipper. Another reason might have been, of course, that it was expensive. It was an expensive cover to make. Anyways, though, so I thought I'd share that with you here real quick. But getting back here, I thought this was a nice package for this 2 CD deluxe edition. I also thought that the bonus tracks were really good. You had some really good live tracks. You had some really fun and interesting alternative tracks, working tracks, and also live tracks too. So I was very pleased with that. So anyways, as I said before, this came with like a little coupon code. You would redeem it online and you would get a free copy of the album on vinyl. So I redeemed the code and I was mailed this copy of the record on vinyl. Now, of course, again, no real zipper, of course. I'd be shocked if it did. I had low expectations for this when I sent in for it. I thought, it's probably going to be really flimsy or something. I just couldn't imagine, that it would be, well made. I don't know why. This one here, the record, came in a plain white paper sleeve, but it was polylined, which is why it's still in its original sleeve. It came with this insert here, which basically reproduces the inner sleeve on this version here that I just finished showing you. And I suppose I guess actually I would say it's good that they put this in a polyline sleeve versus a paper sleeve. But they still gave you the artwork that you got with that sleeve. And it's top loading. That's another thing I noticed about it here. Everything loads from the top rather than the side. I don't know if that's how the original was. If you know, I'd be curious. Like I said, I've never owned an original. Also, I wanted to mention here, this was the first album, I believe, to feature the Lips and Tongue logo, which of course now is synonymous with the band. And as for the album itself, the actual record here, it's on 180 gram vinyl, and it's a quality pressing. So they didn't really chintz out on this. They did a nice job with this here. I mean, who could really expect them to put the real zipper? I wouldn't expect them to do that. But yeah, there you go. It was good quality. So now let's talk about sound, though. This album, of course, in my opinion, is part of that series of albums that is just career-defining for the Rolling Stones. When we think of the Rolling Stones, I think there are certain songs that always come to mind that define this band. And I think there was a series of albums that, in my opinion, began with Beggar's Banquet and then continued on through the 70s and included this album as well, Sticky Fingers, where this run of albums just really defined what we think of when we think of the Rolling Stones. But let's talk about the music, though. Let's talk about the actual listening experience. So as always, I put the record on the turntable, put the CD in the CD player, drop the needle first, let the record start to play. About 10 seconds into the actual record, I hit play on the CD. Then I sit down with a remote control with an A-B switch, and I switch back and forth. I hear a section on the record, click the A-B, and then I hear the same section played on the CD. And sometimes when I do a comparison, it's obvious right from the get-go, pretty much. Sometimes it's like, oh yeah, the LP's way better. Sometimes the CD is way better. You just hear it instantly, you know it. And I'll listen further just to make some observations, like on this track I heard this better, or this sounded this way versus the other format. and I'll take some notes on it. On this one here, I pretty much listened to both sides of the album, going back and forth. And I listened to, everything, every single track. Brown Sugar, Wild Horses, Sister Morphine, which, by the way, as I was doing my comparison, I really began to grow a new appreciation for that track. I always liked it, but for some reason, the track hit me a lot stronger this time around. What an amazing, just very dark track. It really good album. Another one that really struck me was Moonlight Mile. Once again, I've known the song, but I was really struck by how evocative it was this time as I went back and forth. I made comparisons. I especially listened really closely. In fact, I may have even played it more than once, which was the track Can You Hear Me Knockin'? And I really listened closely to that whole instrumental section, the guitar solo, the saxophone solo, and really paid ultra close attention to the dynamic range as I listened to each one, to the separate instruments. Sometimes I'll find the bass oftentimes sounds better on the LP than on the CD. Sometimes I might think the guitar sounds better on the CD than the LP at the same time. But as I listened to this, I became absolutely flabbergasted by just how alike these two were. Now, clearly, of course, these were released together, so they're from the same remaster. But even still, oftentimes when I listen to a modern remastering of a legacy album that has been reissued on both CD and vinyl, I will hear differences. Quite often I've noticed there's a trend where the LP sounds kind of muddy compared to the CD. I remember that happened with the Boston first album, the debut album. I listened to a modern LP pressing, modern remastering of it, and the CD sounded better. The LP sounded muddy. But then later I got a vintage copy of Boston's first album, and the audio difference was almost non-existent at that point between the modern CD and the vintage LP. I remember if you watch that video, I believe I said the only difference was that maybe the CD was just a tiny bit brighter, and that's about it. But here, the more I listened, the more I couldn't find a difference. Everything sounded the same. At one point, I remember I was listening, and right as there was this hi-hat hit, I clicked AB, which leaves this brief moment of silence in between, and I could hear that leftover reverb tone that comes as you switch over. And then I switched it over to the CD version, got to the same point where I heard that hi-hat hit it again, and I could hear the exact same reverb remnant that just kind of gets left over. And those sounded exactly the same. Everything, the drums, guitars, everything. It was so hard to hear any difference that I thought was really even worth mentioning. These two were both mastered to sound exactly alike. There was no difference. And it's to the point where I would say that I would probably let this go. Not because I don't think it's a good album, it's a great album, but if I'm not going to get anything different from listening to the LP, it's more practical to just keep the CD. CDs are way more practical than LPs. I've never not acknowledged this. But the reason I like vinyl, besides, of course, just the bigger artwork, the packaging, more fun physically to look at, and look at while you're listening and while you're reading lyrics and liner notes as you listen. But also a different listening experience. Hopefully better, but sometimes not better, not worse, just different, but equally enjoyable for its own reasons. And here, I couldn't find any real difference as I listened to these two. I don't know if I've ever done one where I felt this much of a similarity. May have been other videos where I said the difference is really close. It's tiny, but it's there. Like I said, here I just couldn't hear any difference at all. So yeah, if you've ever compared these two, and once again, these I believe were both released around 2015. They both feature a 2009 remastering. If you've ever compared these, I'd be curious to know. I'd also be real curious to know if you've ever compared a vintage copy with a modern vinyl pressing or modern CD release. Either way, or both. I'd be really curious to know what your experience was. Yeah, I'm probably gonna let this record go because there's only so much room, and make room for other records that do offer a listening experience that is different from the CD version that I probably already own. So yeah, those are my thoughts on this. And so now I want to hear yours. As always, if you like what I do here, be sure to hit like, hit subscribe, and hit the bell notification icon so you never miss a video. And now I want to say thank you very much to the Patreon supporters. Patreon supporters receive exclusive weekly videos not available here on the channel, and they also get their names in the credit. And so if you'd like to be a Patreon supporter, go to patreon.com/TJR the original. It really helps to support this channel. Lastly, I just want to thank everybody for making it here to the end. This really helps the channel a lot, and I really appreciate it. Everybody, thank you so much for watching. I hope you all stay safe and healthy. Take care. Bye-bye.